which is written in 1922, at a time when Ulysses is banned, Women in Love has been banned, Lady Chatterley Lover has no hope of being published, is how much sex there is in this poem. The typist who sleeps with the young man Carbuncular, really, because it's less trouble to sleep with him than it is to send him away and have an argument.
Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference.
And it is true, I think, to the real, genuine terror of sex, which is what makes sex valuable. I mean, we talk about falling in love. Eliot actually gives you the terrible, sick sense of vertigo that this involves.
My friend, blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender which an age of prudence can never retract. By this and this only, we have existed.
The legendary manuscript of The Wasteland, with Ezra Pound's cuts and revisions, was lost until after Eliot's death. When it was rediscovered in 1968, his second wife, Valerie, took on the task of editing it, and in 1971 she recorded a radio programme about the experience for the BBC.
The manuscript typescript of The Wasteland consists of 54 leaves, of which 47 are single. An assortment of paper has been used.
A game of chess. Under the firelight, under the brush, her hair spread out in fiery points, glowed into words then would be savagely still.
Pound considered her hair spread out in little fiery points of will, a dogmatic deduction, but wobbly as well.
My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think.
The nerves dialogue he found too realistic. Photography. But Vivian, Eliot's first wife, has written wonderful beside it.
She was a delightful person, charming, interested and sensitive to beauty, slight build, pale complexion. I think she certainly understood his work. She understood it far better than I did, and she used to try to explain it to me sometimes. And she was sure that what he was doing was very important.
When I knew her, it was quite obvious that she, rather like Ezra, was of an immense help to Eliot as a poet. And her contribution, and indeed her courage, in encouraging the publication of The Wasteland, which many wives would have blenched from, is something that is worthy of a tribute and memory.
It was Vivian who offered, if you don't like it, you can get on with it, and what you get married for if you don't want to have children. It could be that she had a better memory than her husband, because the Eliots had been treated to Lil's monologue by their maid, Ellen Kelland. And it was probably Vivian's keen ear that made her cancel the D on each good night exchanged by the Cockneys leaving the pub.
You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique, and her only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off, she said. He's had 5 already and nearly died of young George. The chemist said it would be all right, and I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What you get married for if you don't want children? Hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please. It's time. Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Tata. Good night. Good night. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night.
For such a revolutionary work, The Wasteland was an instant success, particularly among the young, and Eliot was idolized by the generation that grew up between the two world wars.
The meal is ended. She is bored and tired. Endeavors to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved, if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response.
In Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited, aesthete Anthony Blanche recites The Wasteland to bemused hearties from his rooms in Christchurch. Waugh is one of a number of writers at the time who paid tribute to Eliot in their work.
There was a cult. It was an attachment to the wasteland which had irrational aspects about it. You came to a point where you couldn't raise any questions about the wasteland, which is always rather a dangerous sign.
But as he became nationally famous, even notorious as a poet, Eliot remained dutifully at his post at the head office of Lloyd's Bank in the city.
Here was the poet of our time, poor man, adding up figures somewhere in a bank. And in due time I asked him if I might visit him. What they showed me was a tiny little room under the pavement in Henrietta Street. If we both stood up, our heads would be almost touching the thick glass panes in the pavement, and those endless heels would be going by about 3 inches above our heads all day long. He had a huge table covered with very miscellaneous foreign correspondence, all sorts of stamps and shapes and letters and colours of the papers and envelopes. And there he was like a great blackbird in a feeder, crouched over this mass of papers.
That's the first American edition of The Wasteland. So this is the first edition which contains the notes. It was already notoriously a very, very difficult poem, a very elusive poem. And so the idea that the author would tell you what was going on was very attractive to the publishers. But in fact, sometimes they're a giveaway, but very often they're facetious and they pose